So, David, we're going to switch gears here now to some text-to-speech options that you have available to you in a couple of different AI tools. And I know there are features out there and products out there that can do some of this for you too. I know like Read Aloud is one, Read and Write, and even Cami. And I've looked and explored some of those tools, but sometimes it's about what you pay for to get those supports. And these are ones that you can use for free. And I also know that with those, sometimes the sound of the voice is rather robotic, which is sometimes if you're using the text to speech tools of a Chromebook or whatever device that you particularly have, can be that way too. So this is perhaps a way that you can get a more natural sounding voice to read the content to you. And the first one that I'm going to show is Gemini. So let me put my screen back up here. And using Gemini, you can upload to it a file and then ask it to reprint the text, because it's not going to read directly from the file, but if it reprints the text, it will read what's on your screen for you. So let's go here and let's add in a file, just one that I have on my desktop. It's about the acoustic anatomy of whales. So once it is there, I'm going to say, recreate this text for me exactly as it is. So as it's going to fill in this, it's basically retyping my whole document, but it's now in this Gemini window. And so once it's done recreating this document for me, I'm going to be able to go down to the bottom. And if I choose the More button here on the bottom, I can have it choose Listen. Then, I'm giving it a moment here.
Acoustic Anatomy of Whales. Thank you ChatGPT for the help with this article. Whales have a number of adaptations that make them well suited for underwater communication. Their skulls are thick and dense, which helps focus and direct their sound waves.
So you can see much more natural sounding voice than the robotic ones that you get with some tools that are out there. And for, depending what student that you're working on this with, might be a reasonable thing, that they can have the text on the screen and they can follow along as it's being read to them too. So I think that's a pretty powerful thing to be able to have. But I know that Gemini is not available for all of our students in all of our schools, at least not right now. Maybe it will be down the road, or maybe it is for some older students, but not for some of our younger readers. But a teacher could open this up and have that playing for students as well. But I'd also like to share Magic School instead as another option. One of the things that I like about Magic School is the ability for you to be able to launch the rooms to students, and that the students can then, within that space, attach their own documents that they are working with and have them read to them. So I'm going to do that here as an example. I'm going to launch a room to students, and I'm going to use the Chat with Docs tool. It's a new one that's available. I've started. Otherwise, you can search for it in the features, the filters down here, or even searching the tools up in that search toolbar. But I'm going to start with this, and I'm going to actually begin with the launch to students, because I know that that's what I'd like to do. And I'm going to launch a new room. And I'm going to, I can call it whatever we want to call it here. Let's just say that this is a science class. It can be fifth graders, that's fine. And then I'm going to choose as the tool, I'll just start typing it here and type docs, there it is, and add that tool for students to be able to interact with. Okay. I can add some customization to this here as well as if I want to, but I'm just going to launch this room as it is. And it's going to give me the URL, or I can assign it via Google Classroom or with the QR code. But I'm just going to take this here and copy it. I'm going to go to a new window. where the student will come in and see it. And I'll just put Jeremy in there and join the room. And now that I'm in here, the only tool available to me in this particular class is going to be this chat with docs. So I'm going to go in there and I'm going to attach the document that I want to be able to interact with. So I'll upload it again. I'm just going to use the same one as the example from the Gemini assignment, and then click generate. So now what it's going to do is allow me to interact with that particular document. So what it does is it begins with a summary of the text, maybe tells me some few things, but I really want it to help me read part of that document. And maybe just to save us a little bit of time rather than read the whole document, I'm going to say, please recreate page 1 of this document word for word, exactly as it is. Okay. So it's going to do that for me. And it says, great, here's page 1 of the document exactly as it's written. So as soon as it is done typing in everything that's there, notice I get the read aloud button. And so if I now use read aloud,
here's page 1 of the document exactly as written. Acoustic Anatomy of Whales. Thank you, ChatGPT, for the help with this article. Whales have a number of adaptations that make them well suited for underwater communication. Their skulls are thick and dense, which helps focus and direct their sound waves.
so again, another very natural sounding voice here in a spot where students can come and they can interact with the chatbot in order to produce it. I think it's another great example of how you can use some of the tools like we've already talked about in just different ways. And sometimes, thinking a little bit outside of the box with how can I get a tool to do something that it wasn't designed to do, but yet it's going to be a pretty simple accommodation, I think, that you could make for your students as well. So those are just 2 different tools that I think offer some pretty good text-to-speech options for our students that need that as an accommodation.
Very cool. All right. And I'm going to kind of add on top of that a little bit because I'm going to be covering Microsoft Immersive Reader, which I think is kind of a good thing to cover. We are always, I don't know about you, Jeremy, but I feel like a lot of our schools, we do have a lot of Google schools, but we have some in our region too that are Microsoft, and really too, even if you're a Microsoft Edge browser user, that this is something that will be very helpful for you as well. So we're going to cover the Immersive Reader, and all right. So with Immersive Reader, if you have Microsoft Edge, it's already built in to the browser. So there's nothing you need to do. It's not like a Chrome extension where you have to add it or anything. It's just going to be available. And the way that you can tell if it's available for your specific web page that you want it to read, or you want to do like some different text preferences to, you're going to see 2 different icons. One of them is going to be looking like this. This is the read aloud, which actually is available on both the Immersive Reader and when you see it here as an icon in your search bar. The only thing that changes is, like in this case, you don't have the additional Immersive Reader option. So it's kind of, you got to pay attention to it, because with some pages like Britannica, just the main page here, right, the Immersive Reader isn't available, but the read aloud is. If I go over to a specific page on history.com, and you can do this with Britannica too, like if I go to if I was to type in our Balto story that we've got here for the sled dog races, you'll see the Immersive Reader, and the Immersive Reader will be shown in this more actions icon. And if you click it, you're going to see the read aloud option, as we saw with the first tab, and then you're going to see the Immersive Reader. And so the Immersive Reader is going to give you more options that come up. And it also transitions you from like your standard web page that we were looking at over to just a text-based format. So if we click on Immersive Reader again, right, we get that look of, it's just kind of eliminating all the different areas. It's taking the plain text out of the web page and putting it into this new window, let's say, where you can change a little bit of the preferences on it. So the first step, right, is it, like I said, it gets rid of everything. And then from there, you could select the read aloud. So if I click read aloud,
The sled dog relay that inspired the Iditarod. The children of Nome were dying in January 19.
okay, so it starts reading it. But then over here on the right-hand side, we have some voice options. And there's two good things about this. One of them is there's like a ton of different languages and options that you can choose here if you want to. We'll leave that part of it. But then you can also adjust the speed, right? So if you want it to slow down a little bit, we just can adjust the speed, and then let's hit play.
January 1925. Infected with diphtheria, they wheezed and gasped for air, and every day brought a new case of the lethal respiratory disease.
So you could play around with that a little bit in the voice options, right? You could adjust it to fast if you want to.
Disease. Nome's lone physician, Dr.
That I can't listen to for too long, but that's your voice options and your speed adjustment. Now, this is what would basically happen with any of these other pages where Immersive Reader isn't available, right? So if I click the read aloud, it's just going to go
Ask the chatbot games and quizzes history and society science and tech biographies, animals and nature geography.
Still in our fast one.
Nature geography and travel arts and culture procon money video.
Okay, so that's going to be available there. But then if we're in our other area where we had the additional options, this has some text preferences and reading preferences that I think are important to point out. The first is the text. So you can adjust with the slider, you can adjust the text size. So if someone needs it to be a bit larger so that they can see it, you can adjust the text size. You can also toggle on text spacing if that's needed. So you can see here, and maybe if we go down, scale it down a little bit, we can see the spacing differences there. If we toggle it off or on, right, making each word more distinct. And then you can also, they have 3 fonts available that you can play around with here. You can adjust the column style. So you can see it's basically going from like a more narrow column to a wider column. And then, right, all these adjustments can work together however you want to do them. And then from there, what you have is some options on page themes. These are really just coloring the backgrounds, which could be very helpful. Maybe if you've got a student that's colorblind or something like that, there might be some adjustments you have to make with the themes that would be helpful, along with, maybe spreading those words apart. They have kind of the, this reminds me a little bit of the Kindle style, where you have kind of the, what do they call that? Like the paper look or whatever it is. So there's some options there to adjust the text, which is great because really, again, we're working off of this web page, right? We're isolating the text and then we're making adjustments to it. Then you have the reading preferences. And this one is actually really nice too, because you have the ability to do a line focus so that the other text maybe isn't distracting the student. And so you have 1, 3, or 5. So you can kind of adjust that how you want to. Then let's take our line focus off for a moment. Then what you have is the ability to translate the entire page. So let's say we want to translate it to Spanish. We can just toggle this on and it will translate it like instantly into the Spanish language for a student to read. Okay. And then from there too, if we have that on, we can always like go back if we want to, or we could change it to another language, whatever you want to do there. But that's the reading preference stuff that's available. So line focus and translate. We went through all the different text preferences, and then again, the read aloud, right? being one of the most important pieces for the text-to-speech accommodation. So definitely something to explore. Again, you'll need Microsoft Edge to do it. There are restrictions sometimes where just like how we have, immersive readers not available on some pages, you're also going to find that with some of applications, like Microsoft has partnerships with certain applications, so there might already be this feature built in, and so you'll just have to explore that a little bit. There are some applications that use it. Then, on the opposite side, you have where if we were to go to Google Chrome, Google is going to have its own extension or something that could be used, but you won't be able to find obviously the Microsoft Immersive Reader in those applications that are competing companies. So pretty good overall. I think it's a great tool to use and can be helpful for students.
Yeah, that was great. And I think there definitely are some features in Chrome also that will do some of those things. And I know they have what's called read along. And it kind of opens up a panel in the side that will do some of the same things, like make the lines further apart or closer together, change the color that the background is on, whether it's kind of that, I forget what you called it, Kindle Nook type of a background, right?
Yep.
Yeah, it'll do some of that stuff too. But yeah, all of those things that are just going to make it easier for students to read, make it more accessible and more accommodating. So I think those are all great ideas that really, could be used to help all of our students learn the way that's going to learn best, that will help them learn best, right?
And we're not advocating for any specific one, but I think showing a variety of different ones that can be used. Obviously, if you're an avid Google user and your students have Chromebooks and things like that, right, go search out the Google options for some of those things that will be helpful. So
cool.
Yep.
Hey, great. Thanks for joining us for this episode today, where we got to look at a lot of great tools and tips and tricks. I think for finding ways to bring learning to all of our students, regardless of where their learning is at now, and finding those ways to accelerate, to accommodate, and make it learning more accessible. So next week, we are going to dive into an EdTech tool that's new out there called Snorkel. Snorkel is a multimodal AI tool, which is going to, we'll kind of explore its different features, that are available out there to help students with their learning, but also maybe to provide some initial feedback support using AI to help get students working towards their learning even when their teacher isn't around. As well as to be able to share some visual and verbal explanations of different topics. So we look forward to that and bringing that to you in our next episode.